All right. Hey there, grant writing unicorns. I'm not sure how much I'm going to love I've never really used this live function where I can't screen share. So we're going to see how this works out. But essentially, there's no way around it. We got to talk about Trump's order today on freezing federal grant and loan reimbursements. I'm going to cover first, what does that even mean? What does that mean in terms of like the federal agencies or how what they're doing right now? And then if you are an organization that's impacted, on how you should be handling it. So I'm going to see if I can. Oh, I can screen share. Good news. Okay, so let's first start with, what exactly is it? Like, what happened? Okay, so two things. There was a executive, basically the Office of Management and Budget issued a memo that basically said, federal agencies need to issue a temporary pause on all grant, loan, and federal financial assistance programs to decide if they are in alignment with the president's executive orders that were dropped on like January, like the day he was put into office. And these are the major ones that were listed in that memo. And I have this linked up in the description, by the way. So this includes protecting the American people against invasion, the executive order on reevaluating and realigning United States foreign aid. So you probably saw some news articles today stopping American funding abroad, putting American first in international environmental agreements, unleashing American energy, ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing, and defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government, and finally, enforcing the Hyde Amendment. Heavy stuff that is basically now then. So there's the executive orders that basically they're wanting to review all of federal government spending and to see if it is in alignment with those executive orders or not. So all of the federal agencies received this in basically instructions for federal financial assistance program analysis in support of M2513. So the federal financial, like basically federal programs, have until February 7th to submit a lot of information, which I'm going to read to you what those columns are. I was able to get my hands on one through one of our grant writing unicorns. And they have to get this submitted by February 7th. That information is then going to be reviewed for alignment with the executive orders of the Trump administration. And then they're going to decide what to do on March 15th. And that is a significant date, and I will tell you why in a second. Okay, so I want to read to you what some of these, I have to like zoom way in to see it. I actually would like to screen share this. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Okay. I gotta see if I can find this. I haven't done that before. It's not a Chrome tab. Shoot. Maybe if I do my entire screen, I could show it to you that way. Okay, let's try it this way. Okay, you guys, I hope you can see this because there's no way to know. This is like so weird. Is there a chat? Oh, good. I think you can see it. Okay, so this is that document I just referenced, and we're going to zoom way, way, way in so you can actually read this puppy. Okay, so essentially what you have here is every single federal agency is listed here, and they all have to report on, and then there's their assistant listings, right? This is how the federal government organizes all of their grant programs. So they are all listed here. The title of the program, the objective, the SAM link, the USA spending link. These are like accountability of where federal funds are spent. And now this is where things get interesting. So identify the email, like this is basic, whatever, the senior political appointee responsible for the program. Okay, whatever. But does the program have any pending funding announcements? So is it on deck that this program is going to be awarding money? Does this program have any anticipated obligations or disbursements of funds before March 15th, which is pretty much going to be yes for all because these programs are rolling forward, usually administering funds throughout the year. Does this program have any statutory requirements mandating the obligation of funds? Provide the estimated date of the next obligation or disbursements of funds. And then again, this is where things get really heavy. So does this program provide federal funding to non-government organizations supporting or providing services either directly or indirectly to removing illegal aliens? Is this program a foreign assistance program or providing, assistance overseas? Does this provide funding that's implicated by the revocation and rescission of the U.S. International Climate Finance Plan? Does it, I mean, I don't know if I really need to read all of these to you, but I think you need to see them. Does this program include activities that impose an undue burden on the identification, development, and use of domestic energy resources? This one is particularly concerning to us. Does this program provide funding that is implicated by the directive to end discrimination programs, including illegal DEI um, mandates, policies, programs, etc., including those related to environmental justice programs? So, hello, EPA, brownfield grants, things like that, or equity related grants. Does this program promote gender ideology? Does it in any way support abortion or other related activities identified in the Hyde Amendment? And if not covered in the preceding columns, does this support any activities that have been based on the executive orders dropped on January 20th and any that are coming out after? So, like, what a headache for these funding agencies because they're trying to track all these executive orders that are dropping like hotcakes. They got to get this information back. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second to move to the second point I wanted to make. I wonder, is chat a feature? Um, by the way, I see that there's at least several of you on here. So if you have anything you want to say in chat, you're super welcome to. I had a live in the collective today, and that's inside of our paid program, and we were just popping off in the chat, had a lot to say. Okay, so I just read that whole bit to you, and as you can see, this is essentially like a peer down of is there a woke ideology out in government funding? And I thought that if you have already made a commitment to the funds in a past administration or anything, like you've even awarded this grant, how can you stop the funding on it from now going forward if you've already like awarded it and made a commitment to that funding as a federal government? But we talked to a lobbyist who is heavily entrenched in this, and his belief is that actually there's a very good chance that that money is going to get clawed back, which is unprecedented. And how and when would that happen? Remember when I told you that March 15th was an interesting and strategic date that they were going to make the decisions on what moves forward and what doesn't? Well, March 14th is actually when we run out of funding in the US, right? So I'm trying to find my notes on this. One sec, let me find it. Hello, where'd you go? Basically, where are you? President Biden signed a stopgap spending bill to fund federal government through March 14th, the day before. So it is really quite plausible that they'll be able to use that as leverage, that we're not going to pass this Congress, we're not going to let you basically pass a new spending bill without this negotiation of essentially swiping out these projects and causes and programs that are not in ideological alignment to the Trump administration. So that's why I think that date is significant. And now I need to get to the final point where I wanted to tell you, like, what does this mean? Before I get to that, I want you to know that Alex and I actually filmed a video for those that are inside the collective about like what does it mean to have the Trump administration? There was a lot of fear and hype around that, obviously after the election. How does that affect the grant landscape? And um, my personal belief was like, you know what? It's going to be just like last time, where you take a program that's already been funded for decades, take the Tiger Grant, for instance, that funds federal transportation infrastructure, and we're going to slap a new name on it, and we're going to like polish it up a little bit. In that case, they called it the Build Grant, but it really was the same freaking thing. If you read the two NOFO assignments or the notice of funding announcement right next to each other, it wasn't that different. But like now you got to say that you're like rolling out all this federal money and that looks great for a press release, right? So I was like, okay, every freaking presidential election, often like that'll happen, a rebrand of existing programs. Okay. So I was expecting more of that and had a fairly, I don't know, I didn't want to like lead with fear in and how I felt about the changes that were coming. But I do have to say that what's happening today and what's been happening since January 20th is quite frankly very unprecedented. And there are organizations that are going to lose. And so if your organization is not in alignment, which means a lot of you, um, there's a very good chance that that money is going to get clawed back. And what makes this so scary on the reimbursement funds is that how reimbursements work is you, as the applicant, spend the money and then you get paid back through the federal government. So you can actually pay those bills. Because a lot of times you spend the money, but then you don't have to pay it for 30 or 60 days, right? There's a delay from when you actually have to submit payment. And so in that gap of time, they're getting reimbursed and then that's how they fund it. Most organizations don't have like that much cash on hand to just float that. Like they're dependent on these reimbursements. I worked with a number of tribes in rural Alaska. I mean, even sometimes that reimbursement was really hard because they still had to front that money and could barely do that, let alone if you're not going to get the reimbursement. Like it might not come or it's significantly delayed. And we do know that federal employees, if they're responsible for reimbursements, their pens are down right now, right? Like pens down in fear, not touching anything until given further permission. So that frozen state is real. Okay. Thank you for the comments, you guys, by the way, in the chat. It's nice to see you. Makes me feel like I'm not just like talking to myself. And um, yeah, so let's move on to the next point I wanted to make. So I have two more and then I'm going to wrap it up. So what do you do if your nonprofit is, hey, Francine, nice to see you. What do you do Francine actually is an excellent example. She's works on a number of renewable energy grants. So are those going to be under firing? That's something I've wanted to look up and see because I think there's a really good chance that some of those could be getting clawed back. So we'll look at that together inside the collective. But now what? If you fear that your project could potentially be on the chopping block, what do we do? And the biggest thing we need to do is take action right away, talking to your local foundations and your private funders, your private donors, the ones that are going to have values alignment with you that can say, look, we might be in an emergency funding situation where until we figure out what we're going to do to pivot and adapt, like the fact that you might have employees that like you can't just let go tomorrow. Like we've got like a phase that we might have to get from today to what we're doing tomorrow, and approaching those donors that don't have federal funding attachment is going to be really strategic to try to manage this transition. So if you have those relationships, or even if you don't have those relationships, it would be really good to go start those conversations about like, do they have, it's kind of like during the pandemic, we had those like emergency funds that was like rolled out right away, really quickly. They spun up funds and they just helped with the emergency of it. And it was managed in a different way than, say, like a traditional funding process where you wait 6 months to find out if you're awarded, right? So that's that. And then, well, Francine, you'll have to go see the first part of this live. So many unicorns. Hi, guys. Hi, Judith. Basically, there's a very good chance that by no means is it going to get announced this month. That's a given because they're having to report on like, does this support I could go pull up where was it? The one on, let's see, does this, program impose an undue burden on the identification, development, and use of domestic energy resources? So just I think there's a really good chance that you can talk to your clients that they're probably not going to hear about if this program is going forward or not until after that March 15th deadline. Okay, so final point, unless anyone else has anything they kind of wanted to ask or bring up in the chat. My final take on it is this, like, at the end of the day, you have to remind yourself that you are an endurance athlete. This is not a sprint. And endurance athletes prioritize the rest days as much as they do the performance days. Your nervous system cannot get trashed in the first 30 days of this new administration, or you're not going to be useful when we need you the most, because it's going to be volatile potentially the whole freaking 4 years. But you need to be able to react quickly, which was what sort of the pandemic was like, where it was a lot of times like, okay, it's first come, first serve that gets this money, and you just had to move and move fast. And we can't move fast if we're completely trashed. So as much as this is 100% terrifying, scary, uncharted territory, unknown, high impact to people's lives, doing our best to try to stay grounded, to do a couple deep breaths, meditate, feel your feet on the ground. It sounds silly, but really like it's one of the most powerful things we're going to do so that you are thinking clearly as we're moving forward in all of this, because information is literally dropping like minute by minute, which reminds me of a data point I forgot to tell you about, which is that, 22 attorney generals from 22 different states have already filed a lawsuit against this. And actually a federal court judge in Washington, D.C. put a temporary block on it, not issuing a permanent I don't know, opinion until February 3rd, which isn't that long. But that does mean that technically it is on hold right now until like the full implications could be reviewed. Like for instance, that Office of Management and Funding memo I read you said this does not impact Medicare, and then yet this morning Medicare payments and reimbursements were not available. So there's a lot of confusion happening. I feel very bad for our federal government employees. They are in a hot mess right now. So oh, share the document I shared at the start. Yeah, I wish I could. I don't know how to. I'll share it inside Circle because it's a PDF. I couldn't figure out how to link that up inside. I guess I could put it in Google Drive and then link it up. I'll try that. I'll try to link it up as a Google Drive link when I'm done with this. But yeah, it's a rather interesting document to have our hands on for sure. Because then you'll know, like you can kind of scan your programs and look at it. So one of the other grant writing unicorns is working on broadband projects in a rural Alaska. And it was sort of like, well, that does pass the test. Like it's probably not going to get flagged as not being in alignment with this administration ideology, and it'll probably keep moving forward and getting its money and being able to like move through construction. So she felt like it was probably safe, but they were looking at all of their programs to decide like which ones are actually potentially highly at risk and should all work be stopped on it. And even, grants that they were anticipating coming up, just stopping work on that, like would not bother trying to move your REAP project forward, Francine, for example, because the reality is if that program comes back, if that program comes back out, it's going to look different. And so you can't really get a head start on it right now. I think I kind of lost track, but it's the end of the day and I'm a little bit mushy, but let me see if I have answered all of your questions. Yeah, Francine, you're saying that the VAPG grant opened last week with the deadline of April 17th, but all of they are literally going to be on pause. It will, like in theory, it's in this limbo land because now the federal judge just put a halt on it. But the reality is they're going to have to report that and then see if it passes the test, right? Kendon Shirley, study sections having proposals now being redirected to their respective institutions will create problems. They're not designed to handle those additional proposals. The March review is out. Yeah, completely, 100%. Amanda's asking, is this for federal grants only? And the answer is yes, federal grants only. But the one thing to keep in mind is that sometimes state funding is federal grants in hiding. So a lot of times federal grant funding comes down to the state or it comes down to a lead applicant and then they are distributing it. So sometimes it can be a little bit confusing to know like where is the actual source of this money coming from. So if for any reason you're in doubt about that, you would definitely want to speak to the program officer or that grant program and like get to the root of that because sometimes it can be a little nuanced. But yes, we're only talking about federal grants, which is why it is so important to go and have conversations with your private funders, your private foundations, and private donors. Private donors will be a really important tool and resource to help navigate this uncharted territory that they're in. But that's pretty much all I've got for right now. I actually just enrolled in or just started paying for the New York Times, which I really don't pay for media the way I should, but they're running like a really nice kind of like literally updated by minute on like how this issue is playing out. I linked that up in the description of this live stream that I guess will show up when I stop recording. So you might consider spending the $1 a week to get that news because I do appreciate how it's like, it's on it. It's quick. So anyway, I think we've been at this for 18 minutes. So we can probably call it. Does anyone else have any other questions, thoughts, concerns? Bottom line, we just want to try to like stay grounded, stay calm. Please take care of yourself. Soul care is a core value at Learn Grant Writing, and it's never been more important than ever. Like have your device off time. If you can leave your phone in the kitchen, please do. If you know me, you know that I take a weekly Sabbath now or a Friday night to Saturday. I have no phone. I have no technology, no plans. I don't think that's ever been more important than now. Like everything that's happening is important news and you have to take care of your own mental health. So please be sure to do that. And final question here from Kendon. It sounds like from what I was reading, the foreign justifications will be hard to get. Usually those are reasonably easily to get approved. I would agree with you. It's not going to be easy. And can't weigh in on it besides like the only other thing I'd say is contact any of your program contacts, but don't do it by email. Just pick up the phone and call them. But frankly, I can't imagine the confusion that they're all dealing with, and they're not going to have a ton more information for you either because it's just trying to be passed down to them. I think there's probably so much chaos internally as all these departments try to figure out what this means that I really can't imagine the mess that they're in. But I think that's everything I wanted to share with you. I'll look at my notes, make sure I got it all. But um, yeah, I think that's final bit of advice. Haha. There was one more thing. Final thing is write your representatives, specifically your Republican representatives. Take the 10 minutes it takes to shoot them out a note. Please, please, please do this, okay? Because they need to know that like how devastating this is to your community, to the causes you care about, to the people that are most vulnerable. Like, and if they are inundated with that messaging, there's a good chance that that might shift the tide here. And so, like, your voice does matter even when it feels like it's a hot mess and out of control. So please, please, please just like promise me that like within the next 24 hours, you're going to submit a letter to your representatives, preferably your Republican ones, and make sure they know that you're watching this issue and it's important to you. So I think that's it. Thanks, Francine, for the message, and I'll keep like being in circle probably more than you'll see me on YouTube, but that's where our community is. But I just wanted to make sure I had a chance to kind of come on here and address it to everybody, I guess. Okay, well, with that, I am actually visiting my co-founder and business partner, Alex. If you watch her Unicorn Spotlights, she leads those. I'm here in Denver with her. I was actually supposed to fly home today, but I was having so much fun with her that I'm like in her childhood bedroom and just enjoying our quality time together. So I'm going to go back and talk to her, and we'll take a little mental break on thinking about this as well. And I hope you do too. And I'll see you when I see you. Okay, thanks everybody. See ya.